Welcome to the Beyond Divorce Embracing Change podcast. My name is Michael Flores, and I will be your host while we explore the complex journey of divorce with empathy, insight, and practical knowledge. Whether you're contemplating separation, in a divorce, or looking for support post-divorce, our episodes provide expert guidance, stories, and strategies to help you through every step of the process. We are actual therapists, helping clients who sit on our couches every day through their difficulties of divorce. You are not alone. Join us as we delve in and find solutions that give you hope again. We're glad you're here.
This podcast is not intended to replace legal or personal help. This podcast is for informational purposes only.
Well, welcome everyone to actually probably one of my favorite titles. I love the title. It's a great one. We're coming into, at this time, we're going to be coming into the season of Halloween. And
yeah.
I think it's fun to go heroes and villains, right? And ghouls and ghosts and all the fun stuff. But this title of this podcast, Heroes and Villains, and I think this is such an important thing to keep in mind for people. And they're going to get some really cool stuff from this episode. So welcome to the Heroes and Villains podcast today episode. We're excited to have you back. Please remember, if you want to catch all the latest episodes, go to Brighter Possibilities FC for Instagram. And if you're going to Facebook, Brighter Possibilities Family Counseling, you can find us on YouTube as well if you search Brighter Possibilities Family Counseling. And you can find episodes of the podcast there. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, you name it. We're pretty much, we're out there. We're trying to get it out there to as many of you as we can. So I think that's what we're hoping to accomplish. I have Armando back with us today to go over this topic, Armando Martinez, and I'm really glad he's here. We're going to bounce things off each other through this episode to kind of talk about this particular area of heroes and villains. So let's get right into this, Armando. Let's talk about just in general, what do we mean by heroes and villains? What does that mean?
So I think for me, for the listeners and the people at home, the people that come see me, my clients, my children, my younger clients, they all know that I'm a big nerd. I'm a big comic book nerd. I've got X-Men quote in my office. I wear superhero socks. But I think what it speaks to is the mindset of good and evil, right?
Right.
Like there's a good person and a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think especially when you're in litigation and you're in court battle, or you just have a contentious relationship with your co-parent, it's really easy to slip into that role of good and bad, hero and villain. And I think it's important to understand that that mindset can be problematic, that can be dangerous. And so when we talk about that, when I say hero, what kind of descriptors do you think? If you're a hero, what do you think, Mike?
Well, I think, I think of a hero as kind of like shows up and I'm going to save everyone. I save the day. And people view me as the savior.
Yes.
Right. Of something, of some sorts, right? That's what I think of as.
You're protective, you're good, you're safe, you're here to save people, right? And then if I say villain, what do you think of when I say villain?
Oh, I'm here to create destruction, to destroy, to facilitate more issues or problems, but all in the aim of, destruction,
right?
And creating pain and problem.
Pain, harmful, dangerous, unsafe, all those negative things, right? I think what is important to understand that a good hero story or a good villain story. I mean, for me, villains are kind of my favorite character that I like to see, because usually they come out of hurt, right? Usually this awful thing has happened and they come out of hurt.
Right.
Some of the greatest heroes also come out of hurt.
Oh
right?
my gosh.
Think about Batman. I don't know if our listeners know much about Batman, but Batman's origin story is what? His parents were murdered in front of him, hurt, right?
Right.
Superman's planet blew up, hurt.
Yeah, his whole family, everything was destroyed.
Was destroyed, gone. Right? And so I think when we think of that, they've taken that hurt and they've turned it into being a hero. But it's important that when you're working as a co-parent with the other side, with that other parent, if you view them as a villain, that becomes really dangerous. And if you view yourself only as a hero, that becomes really dangerous.
Wow. So you're saying the listeners should keep in mind that, if you're approaching the scenario that you're the hero and the other person's the villain, right, then that can become very dangerous. Do you find it even more dangerous when both parents assume they're the hero and the other one is the villain.
Absolutely. And sometimes there's not even a villain, right? Because even the greatest villains don't think they're bad. They think they're doing what's best.
Right.
And I think that's the danger, right? Is that we fall into that trap. And do we want our children to have villains in their lives? No, we want them to have heroes. And I guarantee you, I've talked to children and I've asked them, do you love both your parents? Yes. Are both your parents heroes? Are they villains? No, they're both heroes because they love their parents and that's what they want. They see them as heroes. So it makes it so difficult and so dangerous when you have parents putting themselves and putting the other parent in that role as villain and hero.
So let's talk about the mindset that parents need to have, in a divorce when you think of heroes and villains.
Mm-hmm.
I love that because, man, can you imagine as you're navigating divorce as a co-parent or as a person helping your child, as a parent helping your child, if you just imagine keeping that in mind, like, hey, hero, villain, right? And so what's the mindset that you suppose parents need to have as they navigate all the dynamics within their divorce?
I think they need to understand the danger of having a negative mindset.
Right.
Win-lose, right, of that hero-villain.
You think hero-villain mindset is win-lose mindset?
I think so.
Oh, yeah. You think that plays more into the villain set or the hero set?
Both, actually.
Okay.
Because if I'm a hero, right, I have to beat this person to protect my child. I have to win. And again, sometimes that comes out of hurt. Think of a scenario where there might have been domestic violence or some mental abuse or what have you, right? You feel justified for having that. Never touched the kid, never impacted the kid. But as the parent that, had received that abuse, I'm going to view that other parent as a villain.
Wow.
And so, the danger is that child doesn't view that other parent as a bad person.
You know what makes me sad? I'm thinking about, certain dynamics within families here where parents will adamantly stand firm on their ground. What they believe is heroic for their child. I'm protecting them. They'll do it. I'm protecting my kid. I'm keeping them safe from this turmoil that they have developed in their mind because of this other villainization of this other person. And do you find? Let me ask it this way: do villains become more victims? Or do you think heroes become victims?
I think villains become more victims.
So tell us about that.
Because the villain becomes more victimized. The villain becomes put down more, and then they can become more vicious, more dangerous, right? Because they're pushing back, and the villain thinks they're the hero, right? They're doing what they think is right, and what that does to the system is it creates mistrust. Because does Superman work hand in hand with Lex Luthor? No, he doesn't, right? We don't do that, right? Batman and the Joker don't save Gotham together. They fight each other, and I think that's
I'm cleansing Gotham. I'm preserving and protecting Gotham.
Exactly. And I'm just trying to show, the chaos that is Gotham by being, by being chaotic.
Yeah.
And so again, the mindset is different, but then it creates that mistrust. Mm-hmm. So when parents come in and parents are struggling with co-parenting, the first question I ask is, what's the trust look like?
Right.
And I guarantee you, if they view each other as hero and villain, or I'm the hero and you're the villain, and the other one says, I'm the hero, you're the villain, there is no trust.
Correct. Using the Batman, I can't get this out of my head, using the Batman example, there was a scene, I think it was the Dark Knight series from Christopher Nolan, where I think the Batman's like asking the Joker why does he not kill him? And the Joker goes, I don't want to kill you. I wouldn't know what to do without you. It's almost like, or maybe it was Two-Face, but one of them says something to the Joker, but like, why didn't you just finish it? He's like, I don't want to do that, right? Because if I do that, then I don't get to play the role, right? Like it's like
I don't get to be the savior.
Correct, because in their mind they're saving it, and so this goes back to why co-parents have to talk through some of these things, and maybe so. Let me ask this question then: when a co-parent feels they're in the villain role, like the other parent is portraying me as the villain, is there anything you encourage that parent to do?
I think I encourage that parent, and we're going to get to this a little bit later, but I think what I would encourage that parent to do is really kind of stop and look and say, okay, what am I feeling? And dare I say, empathize with the other parent and figure out where are they coming from.
Dare I say.
And well, because that can be very difficult for when you're in very contentious, very difficult situation to empathize with someone that you view as dangerous, hurtful, harmful. And we see that in all parts of our society where we label people as villains, and it tears things apart.
Sure.
And we have these children that get stuck in the middle and then have to navigate and manipulate. I know a couple podcasts ago, we talked about the roles children play in divorce, and one of those roles was the distractor. And so the distractor, which is, again, one of my favorite type of clients, is what they're doing is they're having problems that are so large, right? If we take the superhero metaphor, that is earth-shattering, earth-destroying, that the hero and the villain have to come together to save Earth because we both live here. And so that's what this child is doing. And so they're creating the environment for these children to be distractors. And so they're creating that chaos. Or they learn, the children learn to manipulate. Well, I know mom is going to do this if I say this, and I know dad's going to react this way. If they're fighting with each other,
Right.
they're not going to be looking at what I'm doing, so I'm going to go do something else. And so you create an environment where children can manipulate.
Right. So let's get into the problem mindset. That was one of the topics we had listed here. Talk about what that is. What is the problem?
So the problem mindset is then we're only looking at problems, right? We're only looking at why the other parent is bad, right? Why the other the co-parent is evil and bad and dangerous. We're not looking at it through a lens of empathy, of caring, of love, right? We're forgetting all the reasons why, we were with this person to begin with, and now we have these beautiful children that we've created. We're not looking at that.
You ever had one of the parents say they don't love the kid?
No.
And the reason I ask that is because both parents say they love the kid, but they do very different things in how they think they're serving the kid. I'm protecting the kid, right? I'm trying to be a parent because that's what I'm supposed to do, right? And you're preventing me from doing that. And so you have this tug of war between these two parents, who one's claiming the other one's the villain and the other one's claiming that, and then I'm being the hero and they're preventing me from that, and I'm being the hero because I'm protecting them from you, and the kid's going in the middle going, right?
The kid's being pulled from both sides, and all they want to do is love both their parents.
Say that again.
All the kid wants to do is love both their parents.
So I want to tell a story that's really interesting. And this was actually a civil lawsuit. And this was nothing that I actually heard the story from I remember I heard this from.
Okay.
So it's nothing I personally experienced, but I want to tell the story real quick. And because it was touching to me and I didn't forget it. So this was a multi-million-dollar project that was to be done. And so the man that wanted the project hired this company to come in and do this project. Well, they didn't like the way it was done, whatever else. Then they were like, oh, you guys did crap work. And anyway, it became a huge problem. And they were in litigation for years. Now, let me say that they were paying attorneys and they were going to court for years over this lawsuit, millions of dollars, okay? And so this guy goes to this seminar, one of the guys, and he hears this person say, seek first to understand, then you'll be understood. That's all he said. Seek first to understand, then you'll be understood. And the guy left that conference, thought to himself, this whole time, I've been trying to tell the other guy, the other side, how crappy they are and what they've done and why they should see it my way. And they're just doing the same thing back. So he took a different approach. So he fires his attorney, calls the guy that's suing, like the lawsuit's going on, calls the guy and says, you know what? I've never taken the time to try to understand what really all went down here. And so I'm going to let you know, I've already fired my attorney. I'd like to take you to lunch, and I just want to hear from you. And he says, as a matter of fact, you can bring your attorney to that meeting. I don't care. I don't have one anymore, but you're welcome to bring yours. Because he knew that one might be a layer of protection for this guy. This guy shows up to the lunch. The attorney comes with him, and he apologizes. He says to the guy first, he says, I want to tell you I'm sorry. I'm sorry because I've only tried to try to make you understand my point of view, and I never took the time to try to understand your point of view, and I want to do that today. And the guy felt, it was very genuine. So he starts to talk, and the attorney's trying to keep him from talking. He turns to his attorney and says, you're fired, get out of here. They spend 4 hours at this lunch. And all they did was just try to understand the other one's point of view. By the end of that lunch, they settled. And not only did they settle, they don't do business together anymore, but they settled on the idea that we had two very different ways we were approaching it, and it didn't mesh well. and we don't do business together with each other. We never will. But we can at least walk away. We can shake hands with each other, and we both feel heard from this, like a validation. And I think that's the thing with heroes and villains is if the hero believes they're a hero and the villain thinks they're a hero, there's a reason they both believe that.
Absolutely.
Why don't we try to understand versus trying to be understood?
And I think that speaks to how to identify where am I? Like what role am I doing, right? What am I truly doing?
You want to talk about that?
We can talk about that.
Okay.
So I think, again, even in this scenario the story that you told, there was hurt, right? Like, again, hurt occurred, right? I don't think anybody I think very few people go into marriage deciding that we're going to get a divorce down the line. I think it's very...
Oh, you mean people don't get married in the hopes to get divorced?
I think there are very, very few people that is their plan.
Right.
But in the course of divorce, people get hurt. And again, that's the story of most heroes and villains, the hurt. And so
that's the common denominator. We're both hurting.
We're both hurting.
We're both hurting, or both hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so it's how do we respond to that hurt?
That's it. That's what the dynamic between hero and villain is how you respond.
How you respond to that that hurt.
So is there ways that they should be responding?
So yes, I think if you're a hero and you respond to that hurt in a way where you turn that hurt into empathy, right? I hurt. So if I'm hurting in this divorce, well, probably my ex, my soon-to-be ex-spouse is probably hurting also.
Wow. You know, I heard someone's, I wish I knew her name. And I bet you there's listeners listening to this that probably know who exactly I'm talking about because she said this. So I didn't say this. She said it, and I was pretty impressed. If you ever are uncertain what someone's feeling about you, just take what you feel about them and know that that's probably what they're feeling about you. So if you're in yourself conflicted, like, they just really don't understand me. They probably don't think you understand them either.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really cool way to kind of start somewhere. Like when you don't know where to begin, think about how they make you feel and know that's probably how you're making them feel.
Empathy is a powerful thing.
Was that empathy?
That's empathy.
Yeah.
It's really putting myself in that other person's position and that other person's shoes. It's all you do. And use that empathy to turn into loving and caring. And so what that sounds like is whenever I ask a parent, because I very, very intentionally will ask a parent, do you think that this other parent is a villain? And when they say absolutely they're bad, they've done all this other stuff right away, they're not. They're still in their hurt, right? They're still like villain.
Yeah.
But when they stop and they look at you and take a breath and say, I don't know that they are, but I think they're just doing the best they can. I think their family of origin, that's how they learned. So this is how they're reacting. I think they love our child and I need to remember that. And, I know they care. That's when you know that parent, that you are a hero and you're not living in your hurt and being a villain. Because a villain's going to respond and is going to attack. Yeah, and they're doing this. They're going to be attacking. They're going to be blaming. And if you catch yourself doing those things, falling into that trap, take a breath and really look at yourself.
I see that. It's almost like the villain will project and the hero will use introspection.
Yes.
Right? They'll look within themselves.
Mm-hmm. I think that's exactly it. I think, and that's the hard work. That's the hard work of doing that. We say all these things and I make no illusions that like, this is easy to do. This is difficult.
Well, if it wasn't difficult, we probably wouldn't have a job, Armando.
But what would you like, Michael?
I can't think of a day I've come in here when it was like I didn't have something difficult. What I love most is watching people become heroes.
Oh, I love that. Say that again. That's beautiful.
I love watching people become heroes. I have a scenario where, and I'll say scenarios, where kids will come in so pissed off about the whole thing. The system, I don't have a voice, the tug they're in, the fact that they're not going to come in and throw a parent under the bus, even though they may know that their parent's doing something that's not fruitful to them or helpful to them. And these kids come in and it's almost like they don't know what to do with everything. They're just so overwhelmed by it. And then to watch them go within themselves and empathize with their parents, right? Empathize even within themselves and go, man, I couldn't control any of this. I couldn't. I had, I was playing these roles as we talked about in our one session, one episode of roles that kids play. But watching them become heroes, watching a parent come in and deciding to become a hero, like making the choice and the decision to say, I'm going to be a hero today. I'm tired of being a villain. And maybe where people get stuck, Armando, and I guess I'll ask you this. Do you suppose parents are getting stuck because what they're doing is they feel that they're being villainized by the other parent? And so as a result of it, they have to become an inauthentic version of themselves to prove to the other person or to the system
What ends up
that
happening,
they're not a villain.
what ends up happening is they end up, again, responding to that hurt, and they end up wearing that more than if they're just, I'm just going to be a hero.
Oh, they embrace it. They embrace the villainism and they go, I'm a villain. They're making me a villain. Let me show you the villain that I am or something. Yeah.
And I think that's the hard, I mean, and what, when you come into the office and you're working with us, I think what we ask is very difficult, to be a hero, right? To take the punches, to take the hits and keep going. You alluded to
empathize with them.
And empathize with them. You,
Right.
you alluded to the Dark Knight series of Batman, right? At the end of the Dark Knight, he ends up being the bad guy, right? They end up hunting Batman, and he says, that's the role I need to play right now, to be that person. But he rose above that because he knows he's a hero.
But yeah, I think there was the last one called The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, The Dark Knight Rises. Yeah.
Like he's literally coming back.
Yep.
He went through the whole cycle of becoming the hero to becoming the villain to rising back up. Maybe that's what's happening in divorce.
It's a hard thing to do, but I always tell parents, is your love strong enough, right? If the love is your superpower, that's what you use to become a hero.
Oh, I think love breaks through everything. I think that's how we connect with everyone. Love is where empathy is. Love is where forgiveness is. Love embraces all those aspects that everyone craves. What was maybe you remember his name, Armando. I know my wife remembers his name. There was a gentleman that said, grace is hard to give until you need it.
I love that.
I didn't say it.
I love that.
Okay. And I can't remember who did. I know it's a wonderful gentleman. He's definitely on Instagram. He's a huge influencer, and I'll probably think of his name in a minute. It's probably Bob Goff is who it was. Do you know who Bob Goff is?
I'm not familiar with Bob Goff, no.
But he made a statement where he talked about grace is hard to give until you need it, and I think that's a hero villain comment.
I think it is. I think you're right.
Yeah, I don't give grace. That's my villain. I don't give them that.
They don't deserve it.
They don't deserve it. But then when they need it, right? They want it, and it makes sense for them to give it, and that's the greatest piece. So let's talk about some takeaways. The one common denominator between heroes and villains is hurt.
Yes,
and they both have to remember, whether you believe the other one's a villain or you believe you're a hero, you both got hurt, and that's why you're playing the role.
Yep.
So let's keep that in mind, right? That's where empathy starts. Right, you're both realizing we're in the same boat here.
We both have been hurt in this process, and I need to empathize.
And I think that's the second piece. So number one, remembering we're both hurt. Number two, I can choose to empathize.
Say that again.
I can choose to empathize.
And I think that's important, that it's a choice. It's an active, intentional thing to step out of your hurt and choose to be that hero.
I've had a situation where a person looked at me and said, I'm just not over this. And you know what? I looked at them and I got to empathize with them on that. And I think the empathy that I had for them to have enough courage to look at me and say, I'm not over this yet. And I know I'm creating a problem by not being past it myself. All I said is, how can we help? Because to me, it was like, that's step one, isn't it?
It's that acceptance.
Yes. I didn't need them to get the other parent in the room and say, let me apologize because I'm ready to. They weren't ready, but they were ready to acknowledge the hurt. Step one. So step one, acknowledging the hurt. Step two, choose to empathize, right? And if you can't empathize, go get some work done so you can begin to empathize. That's number two. What would be number three? What would be the third thing after that? So recognizing this hurt, recognizing that you have to choose to empathize. Would there be a third thing that you need to remember to get into the hero versus being the villain?
I think just keeping love at the forefront. And it's for the kids, right? What are you fighting for, right? If you're the hero, what are you fighting for? Yeah. You're fighting for your kids. You're fighting for the love of them.
Yeah, and I want to change that word, because we say fight as if there has to be a right hero villain, right? There's got to be
You're right. Even I fell into the trap.
I've done it. I've done it. Collaboration. There's a collaboration. Batman needed Joker to be Batman. Joker needs Batman to be Joker. And in the end, they both have to go through a transition, right? And so as you're walking through your divorce, you're transitioning, into a collaborative place. Because everyone, you know what they always tell me? They always want to use the word co-parent, but they haven't even had a discussion on what they align on yet.
I think you're absolutely right. What is it that we agree on?
Yeah. And if you say, do you both love your kid? They go, yes, there's an alignment. Do you want your kid to be a better person as a result of your divorce? They're both going to say yes.
That's powerful.
No, I'm just saying, like, they don't realize that they align on most things. They just have different ways they want to get there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's the best way of helping stepping out of that hero villain role is having those discussions of the goal is the child. How do we collaborate for the child?
Yep.
And being able to see like, okay, we both agree that we want our child to graduate high school. How do we go about it? Might be completely different.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's funny because you can take a train or plane or an automobile and still get places.
That's true.
And you don't have to argue with the person. The train might take a little longer than the plane, but at the same token, we're still getting there. I literally had a conversation with a family where the issue wasn't we don't want a relationship. The issue was pace.
Oh.
And so one's going, can we go slow? The other one's going, can we go quick? Tortoise and hare. And I say, have you ever read the story of the tortoise and hare? And it was funny asking a kid that because it was like, what's a they go, what's a hare? And they're probably thinking, they're the rabbit, right? And then when I said that, they go, oh, you mean like the rabbit? Oh yeah, I think the rabbit wins because the rabbit gets arrogant. I said, well, at one point, yes, the rabbit's like, oh, I'm going to kill the tortoise. No big deal. It takes off, but it wears itself out. The tortoise wins. Why?
Slow and steady.
That's the slow and steady. And I wonder if that's one other piece I'd put here for heroes and villains. Go slow enough and steady enough that you find the way you're moving in it so you can maintain the hero role.
I think.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think to your point, that's the danger of staying in the hurt. The hurt is fast. The hurt is loud. The hurt is boisterous. And so we fall into it. And it's so hard because healing to be a hero is quiet, it's slow, it's patient.
And it's probably personal, don't you think?
I think it's completely personal. And I think that's the next, to really be that hero, you have to overcome your own hurt, your own trauma. And I think that is so difficult when you're in the middle of a fight or you're in the middle of litigation.
Have you ever in a therapeutic intervention penalized a parent for coming in and says, I'm sorry, this is hard for me because I haven't got past my own hurt?
Never.
I can't get past this pain. I'm still struggling. I'm still hurting. I think I had one of the coolest things I've ever experienced is a person saying, I'm still in love with my ex. And they said it right in front of their ex. And I'm like, okay. Like that took a lot of courage. And the ex looks at them and goes, why are you treating me so much like shit? Part of my language, but like, you're treating me like crap. And the person looked at them and said, because I'm hurt.
Mm.
And the person says back, well, I'm hurt too. And I'm like, okay, this is going a whole new direction. And that's the thing I love is because now they're having a dialogue over what they both are experiencing and how to collaborate in a way to achieve a resolution.
And I think, again, I'm a big person about empathy, but you got to have that empathy and understand that hurt to get to that collaboration.
I agree. And and I think what most people hesitate to do with empathy is they're afraid to get hurt again.
Well, it does. It takes vulnerability. It takes a lot of vulnerability.
So let's finish up. I know we need to finish up. So I want to make sure we hit that though, because I don't want people to miss this piece. To become empathetic, not sympathetic.
No.
Empathetic. To become empathetic in a process, vulnerability requires courage.
Yes.
And you have to allow the vulnerability to occur. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, again, going back to the hero-villain kind of scenario, Batman had to train. He had to be vulnerable to train to be that hero. You have to train and you have to slow down and think about where I am in order to reach that level of empathy for that co-parent.
Oh yeah, and I think, Jordan Peterson used to say that you start with a place of trust and then you get hurt, and out of that hurt you become cynical because you don't want to get hurt again. But the cynicism doesn't allow you to reconnect because you're always keeping people at arm's length. So what happens is what you want is to connect, but you don't connect because you become cynical as a way of protecting yourself from getting hurt. And so what it requires is the courage to trust. Trust requires courage,
I think,
knowing you could get hurt.
I think that's something I tell I tell a lot of my clients is that people that have gone through hurt, to go through difficulty, they get hard, they get mean. I call them prickly people, right?
Prickly.
They're a little prickly.
You're gonna hear people say that.
Good. You can. Anybody can use that. Prickly people. People become prickly, and so again, that's you fall into that villain prickly position, that role. So I think if listeners take anything away, it's really slow down. Where am I coming from? Am I being empathetic to the other side? Am I being empathetic to my co-parent? And am I coming from a place of love?
Mm-hmm.
I think that will ensure that you are the hero that you think you are, and you know you can be.
You know, it's funny. You said prickly people. The image I got in my mind was a cactus.
Hmm?
You know, what's funny is I remember when I was a kid, my grandma would cut a leaf of a cactus. So she'd cut the prickly. She'd cut the cactus. Guess what was inside?
Juice.
It's like a gel or juice. Aloe vera.
Oh, yes.
And aloe vera is so important for like your skin and
it's healing. It's healing.
It's inside the prickly. So what we're really telling people is have the courage to let us understand what's inside it. We need your aloe vera, basically. Your empathy is your aloe vera.
The other thing to that point very quickly is that prickly. So if I look at you and you're a cactus and you're the villain, I need to remember that inside of you is also healing, that you can provide healing also.
Oh, man, do you imagine people just looked at each other that way? What this world could become. I love that, man. Well, I just want to say thank you, Armando, for sharing this. What a wonderful topic. I'm not kidding you. I could see this expanding into many more conversations we've had here, I'm sure, many times. But I hope our clients, our listeners will have these conversations as well about how to get to a place of understanding we're both hurt. We both need empathy, right? And then that last one that you said, which is, it was so important. I didn't write it down. What was that one?
That just because you appear prickly, you have healing properties inside of you too.
That's right. And so trying to pull that out.
You can be a hero also.
What was that song? I can be your hero, babe. Who sang that?
I don't know, but I
can't sing.
I think we're going to be safe not being sued for copyright based on your singing.
I didn't sing it. I'm just singing the line. I think it was like Enrique Iglesias. Does that help? I think that's who it was. I don't remember, but maybe it was. Anyway, we'll leave that with him. I'm not the singer. That's Enrique's job. Thank you, everyone, for being here. You get to see the jokes and fun that we get to have with all this, keeping it simple so we don't turn prickly. Prickly people, right?
Prickly people.
But we want you to know that we love that you're here. We want to thank you for being here. Please, if you found something helpful today, anything you found helpful, would you rate and review our podcast? We really would ask you to do that. We would love to hear that. If you found something helpful, it was extremely helpful to you, rate and review it. If you didn't find something helpful, you don't like it, just let me know. Then that way we can take in all the feedback. I don't mind feedback. I love feedback. It's what helps us grow as people as well. So we would love that from you. Keep moving forward, everyone, and thank you for being here.